Hi everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of No Bullshit Talks. I'm super excited to have on the show today Christine Handy. Welcome.
I'm so happy to be here. I can't wait to talk about no bullshit.
I know. And I feel like it's going to be so difficult to introduce you because you've done literally everything. You have had a modeling career, like from the age of 11, you're a TV, radio, podcast guest speaker, best-selling author. Like there's a million things that you do, right? So I want to ask you, say if someone said to you, Christine, what do you do? How would you actually answer that question? Considering there's a whole like bio of stuff that you do.
Yeah. There's a long list of things I do, but they all relate to altruism, which is serving. And so if it's my book, it's a fictional depiction of my life. Why did I write it? To help other women. If it's the movie that's coming out about my book, why do I want it out there? Because I want to help other women. If it's the nonprofit work that I do, I'm on the board of 2 nonprofits. It's to help people. That's altruism. If it's motivational speaking, again, it's all about serving. And if you can figure out a way to make an income while doing humanity work, there's no greater privilege. So all the things I do, including I go to Harvard right now, I'm getting my master's degree. And there's 2 reasons that I did that. One, I had terrible chemo brain after I was diagnosed with cancer and went through massive amount of chemo. And my cognitive skills and my communicative skills and my long-term memory skills and my social skills, all of my skills like were dampened because of that and hindered. And so I decided that I would go back to school to work on those skills. And I decided to get my master's degree and I applied to Harvard. And so that's originally why I went there. But I also am in the program of literature and creative writing, which means that I can write better. So basically, from the moment I wake up to the moment I get to sleep, I have the privilege of serving.
That's so nice to hear. Like I feel like that was one of the most selfless, like amazing bios I've ever had. In that sense, it's like you do all these great things, but actually you do it for other people, which is so rare. And I think that it's the opposite of what a lot of people do at the moment. Everyone seems to do something for themselves. And do you know what's ironic? One of the most popular questions I get on this podcast, people are asking me, they go, so why are you doing this podcast? What does it do for you? And like, all that kind of stuff. And actually the reason why I did it is because I thought it was great to get conversations out there. And actually, right. I was talking to so many people. I love to network. I love to just meet people. And, I just have a conversation with someone and it's great. Like even, before we were chatting, we weren't hitting record, but we were having a great chat, right? And we were saying, imagine if this was out there, that's still great material. And right. That's how I felt about every conversation I had. I was like, this is such an interesting conversation. Like they have so much to give, and like and we were just bouncing great stuff off each other. And I was like, if only people could hear this and learn from what we just said. Like I wish that I knew that stuff like several years ago in my business journey, and that would have been so beneficial to me. So then people were just like, why don't you start a YouTube channel? Why don't you start a podcast? And it took me years to do it, but that's why I'm doing it, so that I can actually have those conversations again, but actually then put it out there so other people can learn from it. And that's the reason why I decided to do it too. So it's so nice to hear, because so many people, like I said, just they only think about it from their perspective, and you're doing all these great things, and it's for other people, which is amazing.
Well, self-indulgence didn't get me very far in my life, and being selfless has gotten me great places. And what I mean by that, it's a privilege to serve. It's heartwarming. It gets me through the day in a peaceful, more a gentle way to live my life. And when I was very self-serving and did a lot of interesting things, and basically lived my life according to my external value or materialism or what society thought of me, I was very depleted and felt very lonely for many, many years. And I couldn't figure it out. And I finally, when I was pushed to the wall and had multiple illnesses, including breast cancer and chemotherapy and things like that, I finally figured out I was just doing it wrong. The self-indulgence was paralyzing me, but the serving, not self-serving, the serving was unparalyzing, right? It was giving out and giving hope, which in turn gave me hope. So it's a little bit selfish in a way, because it does, fuel me, right?
Absolutely. I guess every time you do something good, it does create that great feeling. There's that whole thing of the unselfish deed, like you can't, there isn't such a thing of that.
Right.
I get that to some extent for sure. But I mean, what you said is kind of crazy because, you know, there are so many people out there talk about saying looks aren't all that. And, you know, people got to stop being so shallow. And this is obviously something that parents try to teach children and, you know, as a premise, and you've lived this, and it's sad to take something so horrible and traumatic that you went through before kind of seeing that. But I kind of want to cycle back to before we start talking about the other stuff, because it's gonna make me emotionally like hard to interview about that stuff, because I know what you went through was really difficult. So I'm going to start back when you were a kid. You were a model at the age of 11. Like, this sounds to the uneducated, not uneducated in terms of that sense, but to the unaware in that this sounds like the ideal life, like the ideal dream for any girl, right? I'm sitting in a walk-in wardrobe having this conversation. Fashion is like a huge passion of mine. Like, you know, being signed as a model at the age of 11, that sounds like a super glamorous lifestyle. It sounds like you just were draped in clothes, makeup, fun, like traveling, like photo shoots. It sounds like the absolute ideal thing. But I know that I've got a couple of friends who are models, and the reality is not that glamorous. I mean, she suffered a lot of eating disorders, like she suffered a lot of bullying and like self-esteem issues, even though she was drop dead gorgeous. But somehow in that industry they will still make you feel otherwise. And so from you, who started at such a young age and such a difficult, like, that's a really scary age to have to go through all that. Like, I want to hear what that was actually like for 11-year-old girl. What was that emotional roller coaster like? Oh my God, I'm a model, to like what reality hitting you? I want to hear that.
Well, you know, that's a good question. I loved my job. I still model, and now my modeling looks very different. But first of all, I loved to work. And when I look back at my life, I just was in a hurry to live. And even that at that young age. And so, yes, of course, it brought a lot of difficulty, and it taught me a lot of bad traits. For instance, it was a very transactional world. So I learned that life, and specifically in the modeling industry, that if you do this for me, I'll do this for you. And I just thought that's how everybody lived their life. And so I modeled that for a long time. I clung to that. And that was part of my demise, right? Because it was very transactional, and because I learned that for so long, it was stamped in my brain, that when I was diagnosed with cancer and I lost my external beauty, I thought I had no value. I was 41 years old and believed that I had no worth in this world because my external value was being taken away. And that's not on just the modeling industry. That's on our culture and society. And it's also it's 100% on me and a self-esteem issue. But the modeling industry, like I said, is very transactional. But at a young age, you don't totally see that. But I grew up in the industry, right? So by 15, I had a massive eating disorder because it was a constant state of comparison, and it was a constant state of rejection. Because if you're sent out on a week-to-week basis 5 times to 5 different clients, or 2 times or 3 times, one, that was a measure, right? How many times am I going out to meet clients? Number 2 measure was, well, if I'm not getting them, who is? And so then you start comparing yourself to other people. So it's judgment, it's comparison, it's all these things that we're trying to take away from our lives, and it's negating my self-esteem. And so for years and years and years, I couldn't figure out why I didn't have a very high self-esteem. Listen, I was a model, I was signed with multiple agencies, right? I was attractive, I was getting attention, but I felt really bad about myself. And it was all these other things that were going on that I just didn't even recognize at the time.
I can't believe that someone who landed a modeling career at the age of 11, like, you know, had this glamorous lifestyle, obviously a stunning girl growing up and doing all this stuff, still had self-esteem issues. Like, this is why people don't get what's actually really going on inside people, and people judge people purely from their looks and have no idea what's going inside someone. And I mean, like, so you know, you're 15, you're going through these self-esteem issues, you had an eating disorder. So again, I'm going to touch on that because obviously that's a really difficult topic for a lot of young girls, well, young girls and boys and everyone. You know, this is, they all relate to each other, obviously. Do you remember the exact moment that kind of made you feel that you didn't weren't entirely happy with yourself and you felt that you needed to kind of starve yourself or whatever. Do you remember that moment?
I feel like my self-esteem started to get chipped away at a young age and I didn't understand it, right? And since this is a no bullshit podcast, we, especially back then, now I'm 51 years old, so this is a long time ago. Women were 100% objectified. Like that happened all the time. But it was normal. And I didn't see what was wrong with it at the time. And it felt obviously very uncomfortable. Even if I was on a modeling shoot and a photographer would be inappropriate with me, I never was physically or sexually assaulted in any way, ever, ever. But if he made a comment that was inappropriate, or if he made a comment that was inappropriate, I would never have said anything about it. I would just internalize it because I was taught to respect authority. He was the authority. I was taught to respect authority in the medical field, right? Doctors, and that their voice was larger than mine. We need to stop that. I hope that doesn't continue. I hope it doesn't still go on. I hope young people are learning something different, but those types of things, they shred your self-esteem and you don't even recognize it at the time. And so, but we have to go back and we have to do some, work. We have to put this into the school systems. We have to put this into young people's lives, because if they don't recognize it, they can't stop it. Right.
And how would you so for say, there's young teenage girls out there listening to this somehow, or parents of young teenage girls who they feel that they're going through this, because I don't know if your parents had any idea that you were going through all this and how they handled it, but I feel like a lot of parents don't know, and I feel like a lot of teenage girls wouldn't tell their parents this sort of stuff. Like, what advice would you give them, both the parents and the girls themselves?
Well, for me, it was a control issue. Like I felt so out of control. I was like above water trying to float, right? When I was just under so much, and I didn't even realize I was under so much. I wanted to work. I had goals. And in the meantime, you're going through puberty and you're changing, and my breasts were getting bigger and I wasn't fitting in the clothes as well. And I was just growing up and getting bigger. And so I was starving that because I didn't want my breasts to get bigger. I wanted to be, like, what's her name? The supermodel Twiggy, right?
Oh, okay. Yeah.
From the 70s. Like that's who I adored. I was like, oh, I want to look like Twiggy from the 70s. And my breasts were getting bigger and I was like, push them down. Right. And that's terrible. That's a terrible feeling, but I didn't really recognize it clearly at the time, but I also was just trying to control the out of control, right? I think a lot of eating disorders, I can only speak about mine. I felt out of control in life, in the world, and uncertain about myself. And so I was trying to control what I was eating, right? What I could control was what I was putting in my mouth. And so that's really why I think I started it. And my eating disorder went on for a long time. I was finally hospitalized at 21. And the hospital, I was completely cured when I came out, which was great. But I had the ability to go into a hospital and get over it. Many people don't.
What's holding them back? Why do many people not have that option?
Well, I don't know that people have the financial ability to do it. I don't know that people have the access. I don't think I oftentimes don't know that people have a lot of support around it. And I think, education, talking about it, listening to it, I think first it's a step. But I think that with you bringing up a question that you already asked me, when you talking to people that have it, or young women that have it, or the parents, I think it should be an open conversation. So it's not an easy fix. I don't think anybody is just going to go, okay, tomorrow I'm going to start eating normally. You have to relearn how to eat, and you have to really work on your self-esteem. And self-esteem work is a massive lifelong process. I still work on my self-esteem. I'm 51 years old. It's that critical, because when we have a low self-esteem and we're trying to control an uncontrolled situation, right? Then so many things can push us over, right? And so if we're working on our self-esteem and working on self-love, and we're trying to figure out who we are and where we fit in this world, that's part of self-esteem work, then we're not solely controlled by what society thinks of us, or the external value, or the materialism, or what bag we're carrying, or what address we have, right? Because it's starting to figure out who you are inside, and leaning into that, that's more secure. That's where we need to lean into.
So I want to ask what you think about social media in general there for when it comes to it, because when you're talking about this, like, I've not been a model. I've not, I've never been in that industry. I don't know what it's like, but I can only imagine what it's like. And like, I've been at loads of photo shoots, which are totally different. It's not my career to do it. It's just been like for different, and they've been exciting. Like, been asked to go on those photo shoots, but still they make you, when you're there, all that spotlight's on you, and they'll be like, right, don't do that face. And I'm like, that's my face. Like, I'm like, that's just my face. What do you mean, don't do that face? And it'd be like, do this, do that. And like, I'm consistently like, they'll be like, oh, you need more makeup on her. And I'm like, oh my God, like, you do, like, little things do chip away at you. So I get it. But when you're talking about it as a career, I can't even imagine that. But every time you're talking about stuff like that, it makes me think of social media, because everything you just mentioned about, that constant validation that you need, like, that you're just being, thought of, in that sort of way, the comments, but that's what social media is these days. Like, people use, like, instead of going out modeling in the normal way, people will put a picture on Instagram because they're actually trying to find a modeling contract. That's actually what a lot of people do, right? Or they're trying to be influencers. They'll put a picture on Instagram, but it's like they'll have used so many filters, so many apps now, because they're not happy with the way they look. And they're just sitting there refreshing, waiting to see how many likes they get. And they're comparing it to their friends. So they're comparing it to how many likes their friends get. And then it's like their friends then post a picture and they've got more likes, or they've got picture with the new like Prada handbag. And it's like, they're like, oh my God, now I need to go get a Prada handbag. And it's like this whole kind of competitive peer pressure. Yeah. It's horrible, right? And I just think that I see this so much in teenage girls already. Does that like resonate with you in that sense, same sense as what you went through in your modeling career?
Well, I mean, I could talk about this forever. I think social media has a very good place in this, can have a very good place in this world. I think it is critical to who you follow. For example, if you're following people that just put out their highlight reel, you cannot follow them, because people will compare themselves to that life. It's not real. It's fake. And we have all of us have a responsibility in the social media world, because there are people that are comparing themselves to all of us. We have a responsibility to show not just the highlight reel. That's my bottom line. I think that young people who are dependent on likes and comments, they don't have a self-esteem. And I can speak about this all day long, because I didn't have a self-esteem. It's that critical to work on your self-esteem, to look at who you follow, to listen to how you're talking to yourself. If you feel like you're unworthy because you don't have as many likes as your friend, that's immediately a red flag that you have to work on your self-esteem. Likes and comments mean nothing. If it can be taken away, don't meditate on that. Meaning, like, I have rebuilt my life, not on those types of things, which I call sand. If you can sink in it, which is likes, comments, social media, external beauty, then that's called, sinking sand. And you'll sink fast if it's taken away. But if you meditate and you put your life and all your faith and your time and on things that are life-giving and life inspiring, meaning, like, I have faith in God. I have a faith in God that serves me. I don't need the accolades from society. I have faith in myself that I'm going to wake up every day and do something for mankind. I don't care if I get likes or comments, but that's self-esteem work. It takes a lot of practice, and you have to care about what you say to yourself. You have to care enough about what other people are saying to you, and you have to recognize the negative thoughts and correct them. It's not easy. It takes a lifetime of practice, but we make our decisions based on our self-esteem, right? Every decision we make is based on our self-esteem. So, like, for you, for instance, if you didn't have a strong self-esteem, you wouldn't start a podcast. Why? Because you'd feel insecure. You go, oh, I can't. You self-talk. I can't do this.
It took me a year to do it for a start. So there's definitely that voice in me.
Like, what if they don't like it? What if people don't like me, right? That you got to get rid of those voices. They are not healthy. They are not healing. They're not going to sustain you. But if you change those thoughts to, I'm going to put it out there whether I fail or not, because I know that what I'm doing is valuable. And if people don't accept it, who cares? Like if you have, that's the different talk. That's the different self-talk. And then you have to go one step further and say to yourself, okay, what am I listening to? What podcasts am I listening to? What am I looking on TV? What am I watching? Am I watching e-news and comparing myself to these celebrities that are constantly using filters? If you are, that's a red flag. But if you're putting on documentaries and things that you can learn and be inspired by, that's self-care. That's self-love. And if you are really fixated on how many likes and comments you have, you need to immediately go start working on self-esteem. Immediately stop everything.
I know, but I feel like, you can say this to me, I'm in my 30s, but it took me long to get here, right? I wasn't like this. Like, I mean, I still already have self-esteem issues. Don't get me wrong. I'm still struggling. Like I said, I recorded a few of the episodes like a year ago and I still didn't release it because I was like, nope, I'm not going to hear it. Like, who's going to want to listen to this? And sort of, this typical sort of things. And I definitely post stuff on Instagram. I think, oh my God. And people are like, I didn't even realize people edited stuff until like a few years ago. I was like, people actually edit stuff before they go on Instagram. That's so much effort. Like, I was just like, didn't understand how people did it. But now it's got worse because of all these apps. Like before, you had to know how to use Photoshop, right? Now there's just so many apps you could just do it in one click of a button, and it's quite scary. But I just think that it's fine saying this to someone like myself who's kind of lived their life and kind of, I've been a student, I've done that whole thing, and that it's not been as bad. But
right,
I feel like if you spoke to me 15 years ago, I would have been like, yeah, whatever. Like, oh, if I don't have as many likes as my friend, then I'm not going to get invited to that party. Come on. Like, that would be my reaction, because that's what it's based upon. Like, that is what it is. It's popularity. And it's like, well, my parents used to tell me, apparently the thing I used to say when I used to come home, I'm like, I need this because everyone at school has this. Apparently that's what I'd say. Everyone at school has this thing. And they used to tell me that eventually, like, a couple of things that they'd cave in on, like they'd ask me, which one do you actually want? If you're gonna have this, you can't have this sort of thing. So I'd pick one and then find out that only like one person or two people at the whole school had it, but I just had to have it because someone else had it or something like that. And it was a thing. And I feel like as a teenager, that's what you do. You base things on really stupid things, but you're a teenager, but it's so real to you as a teenager. Like, it feels like it's the end of a world when someone breaks up with you or something like that. Like when you see like teenagers break up, it's like it feels so real. Like it feels like it was literally the end of the world when you see people break up. But you realize, you see them a year later, they've moved on, they've forgotten who that person existed. Like, it can't have been that real if it's but at the time it feels really real. So I feel like, and it's easy for me to comprehend that vanity metrics are just that. Like, if they don't mean anything. Like, what people don't realize as well, 45% of Instagram are bots. So they're not even real people. So just so you're not even getting likes by real people. Yeah. It's like, even take big celebrity profiles like the Jenners, Kardashians. Even like 35% of their followers are fake.
I did not know that.
Yeah, that shows you how ridiculous the profile the social media is. Like, even they're putting these people on a pedestal, like, oh my God, Kylie Jenner, blah blah. A third of her profile's fake. Like, they're all bots. So it's just, and like, I've seen so many influencers like get like brand deals, for example, and massively fail to sell anything to their followers, because people who are following them are for the wrong reasons. Like, lots of attractive women are being followed by pervy men, like, because they just want to see their pictures and be like, oh yeah, she's hot. But that's right. That's what they'll do. And if she's then advertising some sort of like product or something, are those pervy men ever gonna care what they're selling? Right. No, like, the majority of them aren't. So that's already a good chunk of your audience. So you're talking to another very few small. So this is what people don't realize. So it's actually ridiculous. But I get that. But this is also right. My job, and I know, and I'm much more mature now than I was back then. But even
Right.
take myself at the same level of intelligence, but just 15 years ago, way less mature, I totally wouldn't have got it. Like you saying, oh, you need to get out there. Like, I'd be like, no, she doesn't understand what she's talking about. She's just old. And that's what I say. Like my parents, like, they're just old people. They don't get it. They don't get how important this stuff is. This is what I would have said. And I think that's why I'm struggling, because I feel like, I mean, I didn't have Instagram when I was a teenager, but like, if I did, I think it would be really bad. Like, but I think that these kids now have got it. It must be way worse. Like, how do we get through to those people? Because I feel like what you're saying to me now gets through to me, and I get it. I don't think that you could say the same thing to a 15-year-old girl and she thinks, right, you're right, those likes don't mean anything. It's just shallow. Like, you know, like I can, like, you know, these people are filtering stuff and that's not what they really look like. I get it. I should work on my self-esteem. I don't think they would react like that. They wouldn't get it. So how can we get through to these teenage girls? I just don't think that's the way. I don't know. I just can't imagine them like suddenly getting that and understanding it.
Well, I'm not a psychologist, but I feel like we have to, because if you look at the suicide rates now, they've like quadrupled in the last couple of years, right? And so that matters, especially because social media, I'm not blaming it on social media, but I'm kind of blaming it on society because we're not helping the situation, right? By applauding likes, by applauding comments. If you have so many, then you get this, right? It's transactional. It's the same thing as like the modeling industry. And if we are promoting that, on some level, we need the parents, or we need the mentors, or we need the podcasts who are saying to people, remember, it starts from within. It starts from self-talk. And if you can see these red flags in your life, stop, pay attention before it gets too bad. That would be my best advice.
I really wish that this was like taught at school. Do you know what I mean? Like, I feel like
it can be actually.
But but it's not. I think that's my a big thing about education. I feel like there are a lot of things taught at school which are not necessarily relevant, we never use, but there are certain things which should be taught at school, like this. Self-esteem, absolutely. Staying safe and using social media and all that stuff, the pros and cons of it, like actual real life stuff that people go and use. And I feel like that stuff should be taught at school. I think it's way more important than learning about some kind of history or geography, like boring rocks and stuff like that we had to do at school. I feel like that stuff's just, yeah, exactly. I mean,
I'll work on that. I'll work on the curriculum.
Thank you. That'd be great. But okay, so let's get into the nitty gritty, because I feel like, you know, what you are probably most known for at the moment is all your work you're doing around breast cancer awareness, and you know, obviously you got diagnosed with breast cancer, and that's obviously not easy for anyone, but I want to, I guess, talk through that journey, and how you got from, I guess, the moment you diagnosed, what that felt like, to how are you. I mean, if I didn't know it, I would never have imagined. First of all, you said you're 51, had no idea. I thought you were at least 10 years younger. Like, you look amazing. So that, and
I've never had plastic surgery yet.
That's incredible. And you know, you're so positive and so upbeat, like you're saying, and all this sort of stuff. And you know, so many people hear that dreaded C word and they melt away. And it's the scariest word, I think, in the English language, in a way, like, you know, and people hear it and their whole life falls apart. And you're here as this hugely like together woman, so positive. I want to hear this journey, because you know, it's incredible. So
there's so much
at the beginning.
There's so much to unpack there. In the beginning, it was traumatic for me. I felt total despair because again, going back to self-esteem, I didn't think I had any value in this world other than my modeling career and what I could bring to other people, right? If I can't do anything for you, then you're not going to love me. And so I knew that I was going to be very sick for a very long time because I needed 28 rounds of chemotherapy. And so I needed to ask for help. And because I did not have a self-esteem, and because my pride was getting in the way, because I was taught as a woman that we can do anything, we can care for everybody while we're doing everything. I was like, well, I'm not going to ask for help because I'm a tough, strong woman. I'm an independent woman. And that didn't get me very far. So I had to unveil all the pride and all the ego that I had built up for 41 years about, hear me roar, I am so strong. I had to unpack that and say, okay, I'm not that strong right now. I need help. And so once I was able to get rid of the pride and the ego and ask for help, it went along a little bit better, but I was violently ill for 15 months. And during that time, I looked at my life and I said to myself, regardless of whether you're going to get through this or not, you may die of chemo, you may die of cancer. I don't know. I cannot meditate on the outcome anymore. It was paralyzing me. The fear of dying of cancer or the fear of dying of chemotherapy was paralyzing me from being a mother, from being a wife, from being a friend, and from being somebody that I wanted to be with in my own head. The fear was overcoming everything in my life, and I couldn't stop it. And so once I stopped and said, okay, we need to figure out a different way of thinking because this isn't working. Then I would literally be like laying in my bathroom floor, throwing up from chemotherapy and going, okay, what do I need to do to feel better, like emotionally? Because emotionally it was almost worse than physical. And so I started to delve into my faith. I started to figure out like who was for me and who was against me. Like I started, and even in my own voice, like what things are you saying to yourself that aren't for you? I was saying to myself, I'm not worthy of love. I'm not worthy of great success. I'm not worthy of anything if I don't have my beauty, right? And so I started to take those thoughts captive and I started to change and replace them, even though I didn't feel like it. But I knew that I couldn't be paralyzed from my own fear and insecurity anymore. And so I stopped meditating on the outcome. Whether I was going to live or die, it didn't matter anymore. I was going to show courage every single day, one to myself, also to my children and my friends and my family. So once I started to do that, and the fear just kind of washed away. And then I started to gain momentum, right? I had people show up for me. And then I started to go, okay, well, they're not showing up for me because of my external beauty, because I have none. They're showing up for me because they care about me. So there must be something inside of me that people love. So I started to tap into that. And I started to figure out, wait, there is some stuff that's lovable in there. Let's figure that out. And I started to learn about myself. I started to ask myself questions. If I get through cancer, what do I want to do? Like, not what does everybody else want me to do? What do I want to do? And I started to answer those questions. And so by the time I was done with chemotherapy, I had basically 15 months of like purgatory, terribleness, but quiet, not comfortable quiet, but quiet. And I needed 15 months to figure out my self-esteem. And once I was done with that, I was like, the horse was out of the gate. I was off and running. I was like, okay, I'm going to take all that I just learned about myself and all that I just learned about humanity, about people showing up for each other. And I'm going to teach other people that. I'm going to write the book. I'm going to go back to school. I'm going to apply to Harvard. I would have never in a million years applied to an Ivy League school. I would have never had the confidence to do it. And even if Harvard says no, I'm going to be okay with that because I had built back my life on faith and self-esteem. I did not rebuild my life on materialism. I did not rebuild my life on what people thought of me, which had paralyzed me for 41 years. And so when I rebuilt my life, like literally physically and emotionally, everything changed. The decisions I made changed. The people in my life changed. And I wanted to be with myself. So it was like a massive shift, but it was so much work. I don't want any of your listeners to think it just is easy stuff. It's not easy stuff, but I had to retrain my brain to think differently. And I will never forget the feeling of being paralyzed by fear and the feel of being hopeful because it was a choice.
How important were those people in your life to get you through that? Because I think like as you progress through life, you know, like going back to the teenage you and modeling days, you would have had loads of friends, I'm sure, partying or having a glamorous lifestyle. But how many of them are actually still your friend now? How many of them were actually true friends, or they were just party girls who were, you know, wanted to have a call you when you have a good time? You know, you do filter out your friendship group as you get older. I feel like that's just natural anyway. But I think that you filter them out even more when times get really hard. And I
Or they
think,
filter themselves out.
yeah, exactly. That's what I
Yeah.
mean. I think that, you know, it says a lot about people who stick through you through that sort of thing. Um, who were the ones that, you know, surprised you, or, you know, or who the ones that you couldn't have done this without?
Well, lucky for me, I picked women that stood by me for season after season, regardless if it was a happy season or a healthy season. I picked women that were all in for all seasons of my life. Because, and I said to them in the beginning, I said, this is going to be a long road. Are you in? And they were like, we will never forsake you. And I didn't really believe them at first, but ultimately they never forsake me. And then I was like, wow, they really are cheering me on. And then I thought, well, gosh, if they can cheer me on, I better cheer myself on. And now I live like that. Like I look at my life and I look at my social media and I look at what I do and I'm like, I got to be my biggest cheerleader. Why? Because if I don't believe in myself, why would anybody else?
Mm-hmm.
And then I cheer other people on. Like we have to cheer each other on like it's confetti, like it's your birthday every day. Why? It's a privilege to do that. Like why tear each other down? There's there's so much to go around. There's ample, right? There's ample finances. There's ample opportunities for all of us. But if we have this mentality of we have to take from somebody else because we won't have enough, that's a self-esteem destroyer. And you're hurting yourself. Forget the other person, you're hurting yourself because you're really basically not believing in yourself that there's enough to go around. And so I fortunately picked the right people. And I know that some people don't, but this is another message. Like take inventory of who you're surrounding yourself with. And I know people talk about this all the time. It's so true. If you list the 5 most important people in your life on your one hand, that will determine your future. Listen to what they're saying to you. Listen to what the voices that they're talking to you about. Are they giving you hope? Or are they making you feel inferior, right? That's critical.
I think that you know what you're saying about you picked women that support you. I find it so fascinating that there are still so many women who bring down other women, and you don't see this as much with men, and I don't get it. I just don't understand it. I don't understand that women are already, you know, seeing bias in so many different ways. There is like a gender gap in so many different ways, as we know. Probably that's a whole other like topic of debate, I guess, to go through. So if women are already disadvantaged in so many opportunities, why aren't women supporting each other to get through this and work through this together? Because surely there's strength in numbers, and surely they could, you know, build each other up and create more opportunities for each other. It's only going to be a good thing. I don't understand why there is so much of this bitchiness between women and why there's such competitiveness. And I feel like there isn't the same with men. I mean, there is obviously competitiveness. There's like, you know, financial dog eat dog world, but in some ways, it's healthier the way they do it. It might be a bit cutthroat, but at the end of the day, they're not necessarily backstabbing them. It's like it's a fair fight. I don't know, but I don't know if this is what if you think the same, but I definitely feel that there is not enough support for women with each other. I think there's definitely some amazing organizations where they are trying to do that, but
Yeah.
why is it that there are so many women who just won't support other women? I don't get it.
Well, I think again, it goes back to their self-esteem, right? If they don't feel like there's plenty to go around, or if they feel like they have to hoard, like let's use a stupid example. Like I have really a great hair colorist. She does a great job, right? I have friends in my past life, meaning pre-cancer,
Yeah.
who would say to me, oh, I have this great colorist, but I'm not going to give you her phone number. And I'd be like, what? It's that catty. It's that cattiness.
But
Right?
why? So
Well,
you don't have nice hair is because they're
because
scared
it's that competition, right? It's that mentality of if she gets to look as pretty as I do or whatever, I mean, then, you know, it takes away from me. It's a self-esteem issue. And the other thing is that I really want to talk about is we have to let go of taking things personally.
Mm-hmm.
Like if somebody criticizes you on social media, or if you have haters, or if they negate what you're trying to do, that really is their issue, not yours. It has nothing to do with you. It has to do with their heart and their life and their insecurity. And once you let go of that, life can be very peaceful, because you let go of caring about what other people think at all in general, and also about total strangers. Like, don't decimate your self-esteem because a stranger thinks that you're not whatever, right? Don't give them that power. Like, keep your power.
It's so funny you saying that, because it's so true. And I remember so many times, I think it was, I distinctly remember getting sucked into some kind of forum like a good 10 years ago or whatever. Like this guy would say something and I'm like, I have to reply. He's just so wrong. And like, he'd start attacking me and get into some really, and it would end myself in a spiral, and I'd be really annoyed and I wish I was mature enough to hear what you just said, like at the time, and that, and especially now it's even worse on social media, because there are just these, they are strangers, they are total strangers. Why do you care about what a total stranger thinks? It sounds so stupid when you put it that way, but it's like, no, this person just commented on my post and said this, how dare he, and like, does that mean I'm this and this? And it does make you paranoid. It does make you like, if you don't have good self-esteem, it will start making you question things. But it's a complete stranger, and most of that time it's like some loser at the bottom of a profile who's created that profile just to troll other people, just to piss them off and get a rise out of them. I just think it's like, it's crazy. Like, but we all do it. We all like, oh my god, that person.
No, we don't all do it.
Okay, okay, you don't do it. You're together, and it's amazing. And I still feel
no.
like
I don't want to say that I'm together. I'll give you an example. 2 years ago, I had breast cancer in 2012, and I had beautiful implants put in, and I loved my implants. Like, I had a love relationship with them. They didn't move. They were perky. They were the perfect size. And I just really liked them. But 2 years ago, in beginning of COVID, when the whole world shut down, my implants decided they weren't going to like me. And so after 3 months of being in and out of the hospital, I finally had emergency surgery, and they had to excavate both chest cavities, and the implants were gone forever. And now I have a concave chest. And it took me several months to come to grips. First of all, the pain was disgusting. It was so intense, but also the emotional pain of fighting through cancer, fighting through breast cancer, getting my breasts taken away, then putting implants in, and like getting used to that. And then that going away too, like that being taken away. That was a whole new level, right? And somebody, so I posted a picture of a very fitted shirt, and somebody on my social media, a guy said, were you born a man or a woman? And it took me like 3 days to respond. And I shed some tears because it was so new and so fresh to me. But here's my takeaway. One, when I finally responded to him, I could have responded out of anger, pride, or malice, or compassion. That's always a choice. And so when I finally responded to him, I said, out of compassion, why did you ask me that question? And by that time, he goes, oh, forget about it. It doesn't matter. And the truth was, it didn't matter. It was my issue. I allowed him to upset me. Who cares if the guy thought I was a man or a woman, right? But it took me like 3 days of revisiting my self-esteem and reworking on my self-care, until I finally was like, oh, I can't, I'm not going to react out of malice or pride. I'm going to react out of compassion. Why? Because that's self-love and that's self-care. So we have that ability every single day. When somebody trolls us, or somebody calls us, criticizes us, or calls us, whatever, calls us a name, or isn't supportive of what we're doing, we have an opportunity to respond out of pride, right? Malice, oh, I'm going to get him back. Or compassion. Love somebody through it, because it really is their problem.
That's so difficult to do, though. I feel like, you just said you reply after 3 days. That's something that's a new rule that I've implemented in work. It's that when someone sends me an email that pisses me off, like I get a lot of still misogynistic messages. So like I'll get, emails from clients, male clients, which just go, yes, love, all right, dear, like, very sarcastic and just trying to get you to do something. And when an email pisses me off, I don't reply to it for 24 hours now. That's what I do, because I have to take the time. Because if I start typing an email, I'm like, angry typing, and I'm like, if I read it back, like a couple of times I've saved it in draft and read it back the next day, and I'm like, oh my God, I was going to send that. It's horrible. Like, I was, God, I was angry. And obviously, if you have time to reflect and realize, okay, he's just an arsehole. It's not me. It's like, like,
it really is his issue. It is his issue, but I'm not saying that things don't happen. I'm not saying that we can't react, but that's self-care. By you saying to yourself, I'm not going to react for 24 hours, that's self-care. Because you don't want to put yourself out there in that position, because then the guy is going to react with you, and then it's constant. Like, it's this banter. I want to live a more graceful life. I want to live a more peaceful life. The only way that I can do that is by reacting out of compassion. I don't always make the mark. I don't always do that. But if I recognize this reaction is out of pride, this reaction is out of malice, this is out of compassion, then once you practice it, and it's all day long, it's the littlest things. You still think of that. And so I just have practiced it for a long time. And so it's easier for me, but it's like self-care. It's the same thing. You have to practice it or you won't get it right. And why do we do that? Right? Because we care enough about ourselves and we want to make the best decisions for ourselves. So we got to fight for that.
So can I ask you, because obviously that's like what you've been through is crazy. And I can't even believe that after you've gone through all that and battled all that, then you've lost your implants. Like, right. How, like, it's 2 years ago, right? And you had to do this all through a bloody pandemic. I can't even believe this as well. But
and by myself, alone.
Yeah. How are you still together? Like, I mean, how like, talk me through your, like, because I don't know, I'm obviously, you don't have to answer this, but I just need to know, because I just feel like if I looked in the mirror, I don't have that much self-esteem to be able to do that, to look in the mirror and look at myself, gone through all that, and think I'm still beautiful, I'm still a woman, because that's obviously like what he said. Does that come into play? Like, did you at first think, okay, like, you went through all that stuff for the first time to be like, I've lost my beauty, I don't have any worth, and it took you all that time to build up to have all this, only to then be chopped down again, like, quite literally in some way, like, I know. I
was like, is this some sick joke?
Yeah, it is. It's like, what? Like, you worked so hard to get to that. How, like, so it's like, did you not then look at yourself and think, oh my God, like, I am not a woman anymore? Or I am like, did that ever cross your mind? Like,
I mean, I had some dark moments there. It would be impossible not to. It's like a freaking roller coaster trying to figure this out, right? Emotionally and physically. Like I said, the pain was grotesque. So I'm in massive physical pain and I'm trying to adjust now what I look like. I couldn't even go into my closet for several months because I didn't want to try on my clothes that I had to give away or had to throw away because they would never fit me again. They would never look right again. I live in Miami. We're in bathing suits all the time, right? So it took me several months to wake up one day and I said to myself, okay, you've used all the pain that you've gone through to help other people for years. You have to use this. Do not let it sink you. And so I went into my medicine cabinet and I took out an ACE bandage and I wrapped it around my chest. And I was like, I'm going to make a bathing suit for people that look like me because I can't find one. The bathing suits that I put on, they're padded. And when you go in the water, that padding inverts. And so it looks ridiculous. And so I was like, there's nothing for people like me. And there's a ton of people like me out there. So I was like, okay, I'm going to fix this. So I called up a couture bathing suit company out of Miami. And I said, would you take a meeting with me? And they were like, we love what you do for sure. So we met with them and they said, we'll collaborate with you. So I've been working on a bathing suit line with them for 2 years. That's one. I decided that I needed to make sense out of the pain and help other people with it. The next thing I did was call my modeling agency. And I said, bummer, I now have a concave chest. And I said, but I'm going to work. And they kind of were like, what? Well, let me really, do you want to send us some pictures? And I was like, okay. So last September, I went to New York and I said to my modeling agency, I'm going to go meet as many brands as I can because I need to walk in New York Fashion Week. I've never been a runway model. I've always been a catalog model. So I ran around New York last September in 2021. And while all my friends were running around New York in Ubers and going to nice lunches, I was on the subway going to as many shows as I could talk my way into and talking to brands and saying to them, I've been a model for 40 years. I want to walk in the runway in February. I want to show what this is because there are women that have no self-esteem. They feel so much shame. They don't know who they are anymore. And we need to help them. So just recently in February in New York City, I walked in 4 shows. And the brands that used me, they put me in tight clothes so that you could see that I had no chest. Let me tell you, it takes a lot of courage to show up like that, but you can't imagine how many lives that I'm changing. And so I had to figure out in the depth of my pain that there had to be purpose in it. And I found a way. And that's just what we have to do, or we're never going to survive this thing called life.
Yeah, but you do realize that there is basically no one else like you who do that. Like there are very few people like you. I have just heard you describe one of the most traumatic things that could ever happen to a woman ever. And you've just turned that into inspiring every other woman out there. And like, that's incredible. Like, I can't believe it. I'm like, I don't think I could ever do that. I don't think that if that would happen to me, I feel like I would struggle. And what you've just said is huge. And you're right though, every woman I'm sure listening to this is going to be in awe of what you've done and how and then there must be other people out there with breast cancer who think the same thing. And like you were saying about following people on Instagram, that's how I feel with those people who show the real stuff. Like there are beautiful women on there who will show their pictures filtered and unfiltered, and every time I look at it, I'm just like, it's so nice to see those like the real people doing that, and they're inspiring other women who have low self-esteem, realize that not everyone out there is stick thin or has like the perfect glutes that they see on all the the fitness models and this, all that kind of stuff that people are filtering. So it is great to see, and I think that what you've just done is one of the bravest things I've ever heard. Like honestly, I can't believe it. But so
well, can I tell you one more thing about that?
Yes.
So I got a message today from somebody on social media, and she has messaged me for several months, maybe years. I don't know. I can't remember. And she said to me today, she lives in a different country, and the country she lives in does not tolerate women without breasts. So they have to wear something that makes them look like they have breasts. She said to me, she messaged me on social media today, and she said, today was the first time ever I didn't wear my prosthetic to work. And she goes, I was at work for 5 minutes and I walked home and I put it back on. And I messaged her back and I said, that's your first, at least you got that far. She would have never, ever, ever not wearing the prosthetic if she had not been watching me do what I do. And it has nothing to do with me. It's about helping other people. And if I can show courage, like I said back when I was talking about chemotherapy, how I didn't meditate on the outcome anymore. I decided that every single day I was going to show courage because it was going to help me and other people. It's the same thing. If I show courage and I don't put a prosthetic on, and no disrespect to anybody that wears a prosthetic, I love that. You have to do you, I have to do me. But if I choose not to wear a prosthetic and I want to showcase this so that other people don't feel so ashamed or alone in their pain, I'm going to do that all day long. And so it's a privilege to do this. It's a privilege to show courage, because that's it's like a wave effect. If I show courage, if you show courage, other people are going to feel that, and then they're going to have that courage. They're going to see it and they're going to learn from that.
How do you handle the comments? Because people must still say stuff. People must still stare. People must still
Oh, they stare all the time. I live in Miami. They stare all the time.
How do you handle that? Like you must, it must can't be all 100% positive all the time. You must be thinking, oh my God, just stop staring at me. Like, you know, it must be at some point feel like that, no?
Sometimes I look at women's beautiful breasts and I look at it, I go, oh, it's not that I'm jealous, but I miss it, right? I miss that. And I've been going through a divorce for a long time. I got to go back out into the dating world. That's a little bit scary when you have a concave chest, right?
Wow.
And so that's a whole nother level. And so I just know I have rebuilt my life on a sustainable self-esteem and faith. Nobody can touch that. Nobody can take that away. It cannot ever be stolen from me. Faith can never be stolen from you.
How have you found that dating in this one? Like, have you met many men who are actually understanding?
Yeah.
And
Yeah. And I
what's
don't
it
ever
been
cover
like?
it. I don't ever cover it up. I always say to people who, you know, I meet or whatever, if they ask me out on a date or something, I say, go Google me first. Like, go see what is out there. Cause I don't want anybody who doesn't want to be with me. And there's plenty of information online about what I do and why I do it, you know, and there's pictures of me and really, well, walking New York Fashion Week and, you know, clothes that you can certainly see I'm concave. And so I'd rather them just see that first. And then if they want to take me on a date, that's fine. But I never want anybody in my life that doesn't want to be in my life.
I wish everyone could think like that. How much of a better world would it be if everyone just surrounded themselves with people who, you know, they wanted to be around, and they wanted to be around them, and you know, everyone was just, but there are so many people out there desperately trying to impress the wrong people,
Or
trying
anybody.
yeah,
Trying to impress anybody, that's a red flag. And I'm not trying to impress anybody by what I do. You know what I mean?
so I mean, I feel like I could speak to you about this forever. Like it's you're so inspiring, it's crazy. But like I want to just, I guess, give one last note, you know, one last thing from you to those women out there who have, and I say women, but you know, men get breast cancer too. My uncle got breast cancer, you know, and it happens.
Yeah.
So, but I guess for me, I think it's the femininity aspect of it. That's a huge part of who we are as women.
Yeah.
To any women out there who have been diagnosed or who are going through any bit of this, as you've seen, because it was 10 years later, you still had to be hit with a horrific thing. I still can't believe it. What advice would you give them?
That's a very loaded question.
Sorry.
Oh, I would dive into faith and whatever that looks like for you. I mean, I don't like to preach about religion because it's not my, I'm not a preacher. It's not my place. But if I did not know God, I don't know if I would still be here. So that's where I go. I say to myself all the time, because I live in chronic pain. There's things that happen to me every day. And I say to myself, when things get really difficult for me, I say, let go and let God. I mean, I guess you could say, let go and let the universe, like, give yourself the grace, whatever it is for you. But I wouldn't meditate on the outcome, because the outcome is going to be the outcome, right? I still could get cancer tomorrow. But if I live every day as best I can in a way that I'm proud of myself, showing courage and showing up for myself, even in trauma, that's the best advice.
That's amazing. I feel like you're right there, because I'm not religious, but I really, really admire people who are. And I always say this because I'm not religious at all, and a lot of people who aren't religious don't like talking about religion, but I actually am a little bit jealous of people who are religious. Like you're just saying, like, you, at tough times, you can turn to God, and you have someone who's always there for you, who loves you unconditionally, you can speak to and not feel alone. Like, because I'm not like that, I don't necessarily have that. So I feel like in some ways I'm kind of jealous of people who do have that faith, and I get it. But you're right, I think it doesn't matter whether it's God or whatever it is, some kind
whatever
of
that is
faith,
to you.
some kind of faith, something that means a lot. I think that's so important. And I think for me it's like, you know, being blessed to have such people in your life that who really do care and love for you. I think that's really important, like you said, who can actually stick by you through those tough times, because there's not many of them out there who are truly like that. But
Well, I'll stick by you.
thank you.
I'm forever on your team for sure.
It's been an absolute pleasure today, and God, it's like made me think now, and I'm like, oh, I can't believe it. But honestly, it's been so amazing to have you. And for sure, I'm sure I'd want to speak to you again and have some more words of wisdom for all the women out there. But I just think this will be one of the most inspiring episodes I've got, and I'm sure that loads of the listeners will want to speak to you. So what's the best way if people want to get in touch with you? What's the best way to get in contact?
Well, I guess social media. I know. No, you can Google Christine Handy. There's a lot of information out there. I am on major social media platforms. I don't respond a lot to Twitter because I'm not on it much, but I'm obsessed with Pinterest. I'm a fan of Instagram. And I do Facebook and things like that. So Christine Handy or Christine Handy 1. Christine Handy 1 on Instagram, because there was already Christine Handy on Instagram. So I had to put the 1 next to it. But my book is called Walk Beside Me. It's a good read. It's been quite popular. The film that's coming out about my life is called Willow, the feature film. So there's stuff out there.
There's a lot of stuff out there. I feel like I need to delve into it in another podcast episode, but I'm going to put everything in the show notes so people can get in touch with you. And but yeah, it's been so wonderful, and I can't wait to kind of hear what people have to say, and just, I guess, speak to more people who've been inspired by you, and just keep doing what you're doing, because you're a rare breed and the world needs more people like you, for sure.
Thank you.
Thank you. And thanks everyone for listening in today. If you've liked the podcast, then please be sure to, you know, hit that like button or subscribe, and the vanity metrics that we've been talking about. But it definitely does help the podcast reach more people, and we'd really appreciate it to get these great gems like we've had today out there. So thank you so much, and I'll see everyone next week.